Welcome to today's webinar, everyone. This one's called Blazing New Trails with Salesforce Data. Today we are going to go on this trek together, excuse the pun, exploring how we can make the most of our Salesforce data using FME. My name is Sanai, and I'm an FME Server support specialist here at Save Software. I've been here for about a year and a half now. And we also have Chris and Sienna here, and they are both support specialists on the customer solutions team. And we have an agenda for today. So to start off, I'm going to go over the ways in which we can connect to Salesforce from FME. And then Sienna is going to show us how to use the Salesforce Connector, and also how to build statements with the Salesforce query language, SOQL. And if you don't know what SOQL is, that's okay. We're going to start with the basics and go from there. Chris will follow up with a deeper dive into using custom API requests to Salesforce with the HTTP caller. And lastly, we have some resources to share with you all so that you can start building workflows with your own Salesforce data. But before we get started, we're going to kick off with a little bit of trivia here. So the connection between Salesforce and Save Software goes a little deeper than you might have expected. In fact, our co-founder, Dale Lutz, and the CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, share something in common. And we're going to open a poll so that you all can guess what that is. Are they both elite Tetris champions? Or are they both classic console enthusiasts and wrote for the same Atari newsletter? Do they both wear Hawaiian shirts to the office every day? Or lastly, did they both write a piece of software on how to juggle? So the poll is now open. Please take a moment to vote on what you think Dale and Mark have in common.
All right. Wow, I can see it's about 50-50 split right now between a couple.
There's some clear front runners here.
All right, we're almost at about most of you having voted. So we'll close down the poll in just a few seconds here. Okay, are we ready to see the results?
I think so. Okay, so the clear front runner is, well, actually wrote a piece of software on how to juggle. However, if you voted for wrote for the same Atari newsletter, you're correct. Dale and Mark both wrote for the same Atari newsletter in 1982. And here's the tweet where this came out recently. Ever since, I think Salesforce and Save Software may have just been destined to be together. Okay. So Salesforce, by definition, is a collection of cloud computing solutions developed to assist with customer relationship management, or CRM, as the acronym you commonly hear. It's an essential application for many organizations, and so it's going to contain some of our most valuable business information. This would be customer interaction, lead tracking, financials, training, education platform. It can be a little bit of everything. So when we have full access to this information, it's going to really help us make better business decisions, organize our resources, and operate more efficiently. And today we're going to show you how you can make better use of your Salesforce data with FME. Because extracting value out of data and automating tasks is really what FME excels at. And we here at SAFE use all of the tools that you're going to see today internally for our daily routine workflows, all the way to our bigger projects, which we're going to talk about today as well. But for how much value we've gotten out of them, we feel like maybe we haven't talked about this integration enough between Salesforce and FME. So this webinar is our opportunity to share how you can get started with these kinds of workflows and share some of our best tips. But just to back up, who are we? We're Safe Software, and we make FME, and maximizing the value of data is kind of what we do. Safe Software has been solving data challenges for over 25 years. There's tens of thousands of organizations that are using FME, and we have many fantastic partners supporting them around the world. We offer 3 platforms to work with. So FME Desktop is where we build data workflows, and that's what you'll primarily see today. FME Server is how we automate and share these workflows, as well as organize them. You may also choose to host your FME server remotely with FME Cloud. We also have FME Mobile for all of your on-the-go workflows. And if you hadn't had a chance to use any of these before, you want to get started, please just head over to our website, safe.com, to download a free trial. And this slide just sort of illustrates the diversity of data formats that we support. We work hard to keep up with the constantly changing world of data, and I imagine that this chart will be some sort of strolling video. Someday it'll be too big to fit all of the data formats on one slide. But to get started talking about Salesforce now, we can start off with some real life examples of some of our customer workflows. So first we can chat about Surrey Heath. So this is going to be about Surrey, the county in England, not Surrey, British Columbia, Canada, where the Safe Software offices are located. But one of their FME workflows synchronized their Salesforce data with Fulcrum, which is a mobile data collection app, and updates are sent in real time from both directions from either application so that their data is always current regardless of where and when they're looking at it. And we're going to use some of these same tools that they use today. So that would be the HTTP caller for making custom requests to Salesforce, as well as the Salesforce reader and writer. Next, we have the Cochraneville Agricultural Service. Now, the default Salesforce reporting was too complicated and difficult for their employees to use. It contained too much information, and the reports were just not what they wanted. So FME can target and format Salesforce as well, Salesforce data as well. So they built a tool that lets their employees instantly create easy to understand Excel reports containing only the information they need, the charts they wanted with preset custom formatting. And if this particular workflow sounds interesting to you, our first demo will actually show a Salesforce to Excel workflow. So keep watching. But let's look at the toolbox that's going to allow you to work with Salesforce data directly in FME. Like a lot of applications, it's not always an easy task to harness Salesforce data. So on this slide are just some of the problems that many of us might be familiar with. It's a very large application, so you might not know your way around, or if you do, it could be an even bigger task to train all of your staff to do so. The data is sometimes entered wrong, entered twice. Maybe it's sitting somewhere else waiting to be migrated from another database or application. Or even when it looks great, it can be tricky to connect it to other data sets that you have somewhere else for visualization, or maybe do the type of analysis you're looking for. So because of all of these challenges, the data can really just sit there unused and unhelpful. But we can solve some or all of these data challenges using FME. We can pull data in and out of Salesforce and transform it so that we can work better and smarter. And we have 3 primary tools for connecting to Salesforce from FME. The first is the dedicated Salesforce reader writer. So this is really easy to use and it does the job well. We also have the Salesforce Connector. Now, this is our best performer for targeting and reading data. And lastly, the HTTP caller is our sort of all-star transformer for working with APIs, all APIs, but Salesforce in particular has quite a few to choose from, and we'll look at those as well. So the HTTP caller is going to be the best tool for making custom requests, with whatever API that you choose to use. So this table is just going to illustrate some of these key differences between the tools. So if you care about what's under the hood, they're built on a couple of different APIs, and that will make a difference. So the Salesforce Connector uses the Lightning Platform REST API, and that's going to make it the best out-of-box option if performance is important to you. That's because it's noticeably faster than the reader-writer, which uses the old bulk API. And as I mentioned, Salesforce offers many other APIs, and so you could potentially use any of these with the HTTP caller. And of course, we have to authenticate with Salesforce in order to access our data. So the reader-writer just uses basic authentication. Otherwise, we can use a secure web connection with the Salesforce connector to authenticate with OAuth 2. How you authenticate with the HTTP caller is going to depend on the API you choose. So this might be basic or OAuth. You'll have to refer to the documentation to determine which one that might be. So this is what basic authentication is going to look like in our reader and writer. We just log in using a username and password, and just note that you may have to ask your Salesforce administrator to make sure that your account has the API access you need. So this will just be in a setting in your account, as well as you might need to get a token, a security token, if your Salesforce is hosted outside of your trusted network. That might be another thing to check, but after you have these key pieces of information, you're good to log in and access all of your Salesforce data directly from the reader. And now the web connection is the other way in which we connect to Salesforce. So web connections in FME allow us to securely store our credentials so that we can connect to different applications from inside of our workspace. So for every web connection, there's going to be an underlying web service, which stores some of the information about how we connect. So some are very generic and we really never have to look at them, but then others like Salesforce require a little bit of configuration. So before we can log into our Salesforce web connection, the first step is to fill out the Salesforce web service. Now this is what's pictured on the slide here. It just requires some key pieces of information. This will be your client ID, client secret, and the URL that you use to access Salesforce. And to get this information, it's pretty simple. Inside of the Salesforce platform, you have to create something called a connected app. A connected app is going to give you all the information you need for this web service. And once you fill out the web service, making a connection is going to be as easy as logging into the Salesforce page from FME Workbench. And once you've logged in, that's it. You just select the web connection to use inside of your Salesforce connector or the HTTP caller, depending which one you're using. But you can reuse it in all of your workflows. You can share it if you need. You can upload it to FME Server. It's a really handy tool to have. So if you're still wondering which Salesforce tool is going to be best for any particular workflow you're thinking of, this is sort of a high-level compare and contrast that you might use to determine that. So we could probably say that these tools are in order of complexity from left to right, roughly. The reader-writer is going to be the easiest to get started. It's plug and play, so we're just dropping it into our workspace, logging in, and selecting the data we want to read in. However, it can be noticeably slower, especially if you're working with large data sets. And depending on your organization, basic authentication might not be enough. So you'll just have to check that. Second, the Salesforce connector could be our personal favorite for reading in data. It's very versatile, it has great performance. It does have some limitations in that it's read-only, so you can't write data using the Salesforce connector. And you're going to have to build SOQL statements to target the data you're looking for. But because of that, it's more precise and likely, think you'll probably eventually prefer using it to the Salesforce reader. Lastly, the HTTP caller is going to give you maximum versatility. You can't go wrong here, but you will need to know a little bit about APIs to get started. Our last demo will show you how that all works. Of course, you can use any combination of these tools in any one workflow. So you might read in data with the connector and then write it out with the writer, do something else with the HTTP caller all in one workspace. There's not a lot of limitations on what you can do. Okay, so let's see some of these in action. We're going to do a demo here where we can pull out data from Salesforce and write it to Excel. So let's head over to FME Workbench. Now we can start by adding a Salesforce reader to our canvas by typing its name. That'll show up on our list. And remember, the reader and writer requires basic authentication. So we can look at that inside of our parameters. So we fill out our host, our username, password, and I'm also supplying a security token because our Salesforce is outside of our trusted network. And with these credentials, now we can get access to all of our tables inside of Salesforce. So we have a lot of tables inside of Salesforce. For this workflow, we're going to be interested in looking at the opportunities data. So I'll just check the opportunities table, press OK, OK again, and once more. And now once this is added to our canvas, I'll just run it so we can take a look at what that data looks like as it comes in directly from Salesforce. And in case you're wondering, this is going to be demo data. It's not our own Salesforce data here at Safe. Once we're finished reading here, we're going to have 29 dummy records for all of these opportunities. And each one will have attributes such as account information, what stage the opportunity is at, dates, financials, anything you could need to know. But for this demo, we're going to be interested in the actual revenue for each opportunity, and that's stored in the amount attribute. So we're going to create a pivot table out of this attribute, and that's going to show the revenue statistics for each fiscal period, which we also store in a couple of attributes in here. There's so many, but here we are, fiscal quarter and fiscal year. So to do this, we just have to add an attribute pivoter to our workspace. And the attribute pivoter makes it easy to restructure our data and create a pivot table and calculate summary statistics to fill it. So inside, we're going to group our rows by those fiscal periods. And we can reorder them. And then we want to analyze our revenue for each opportunity. So the attribute to analyze is going to be amount. And we have the option to calculate different statistics. We don't need to do them all, but for this, why not? We'll select those, and we don't want to include the grand total. Once I select OK, the attribute pivoter has two output ports, you might notice. The statistics we asked for come out of the data port, and because we are restructuring the data into a pivot table, a new schema will come out of the summary port. The last step is to add an Excel reader to our, Excel writer to our canvas. And we can give our Excel sheet a name like fiscal amounts. And then we want to do a little bit more formatting than the default. Inside of our parameters, we can configure this. Now, if we already have an existing Excel sheet with all of the formatting that we want to use, we can use that as a template. So maybe we took some time to make some charts, give it some color. There's no need to do this all again. So we can select the template file we want to use. And then the sheet from that file. And then select OK. And now the last step is we must choose to write this data out in dynamic mode. This is because the attribute pivoter generates a schema dynamically depending on the input data. So for example, from one quarter to the next, we might have more rows in that output table. So that's why the attribute pivoter will have a port that outputs the new schema, this bottom port here, so that we can tell the destination writer how to structure our pivot table every time this workspace runs. So I'll select OK. And once I connect the ports to this writer, I can open it up. And inside of the schema sources, instead of using the schema from our Salesforce reader, I'm going to choose to use the schema supplied by the attribute pivoter instead. And we want to truncate the data each time. This is so it stays up to date with each run. And now we can run this workspace from the beginning. And our Salesforce opportunity will be read in. We'll calculate our summary statistics from the attribute pivoter. And then last, we will write out our report to an Excel document. So it's finished writing. We can take a look at our pivot table result here in the data inspector directly in FME Workbench. So here we can see each fiscal year and fiscal quarter and the statistics for each opportunity and all of the actual revenue statistics. Or we could go look at our newly created Excel table, which I've written to this folder. And we can see that we've, because we use that template, it has all of this formatting on the table, as well as any kind of charts we want to include. And yeah, we could easily create a tool from the same workspace that lets an end user create this report without too much effort. So with that, I'll pass it over to Sienna for some discussion on SOQL and the Salesforce Connector.
All right, thanks, Sinai. All right, perfect. And I chose the right screen too, so we're off to a great start here. So as Sinai mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the Salesforce Connector. She's already gone over most of this stuff, but just to reiterate, it uses a web connection to authenticate. We only read in data, so we can't write it, and it requires SOQL knowledge to work. So there's a little bit more of a learning curve to using the connector, but generally we think the performance gains are really worth it. And learning SOQL isn't really hard due to some tools that Salesforce has. So it's an easy way to get started working with Salesforce. But first, let's take a detour. Throughout my section of the presentation, I'll be talking a lot about our ideas that sit in our community. That's kind of what my demo revolves around. So first, I just wanted to introduce what that is. So if you don't know, FME has a community where you can go and you can post questions, and you can also post ideas here. So how do ideas work? You can go in, you submit your idea. Other users can vote on them. They do get reviewed by either our product managers or by other safers. And then once they're interested, we'll develop them. So you can see the second idea here is in our betas already. I was trying to think of a hiking pun for that and I couldn't. I was thinking like viewpoint, but not quite the same thing. So let's get started with SOQL. At first, learning a new language seems pretty scary, but once you know how to do it, it's quite easy to get started. Also, Salesforce has this thing called Workbench that makes it very easy, and I'll show what this is now. So Workbench is completely free to use. Hopefully I can log in. And what it does is it gives you a template for creating SOQL queries. So first you select SOQL, and then you're going to select what object you like to look at. It gives you a list of all the fields that you have on your object, and these include custom ones, the ones with the / or the __C are custom fields. So I can select categories from ideas, I can filter them by anything. So let's say I want to select the category and select a title here. I can do so, and it's going to create this SOQL query for me. So that's just a very simple way to get started, and you can select this query. This one would fail because there's no idea what the title of 4553, but you get the idea. It's a way to manually build your queries for you. It shows all the objects you have access to and all the fields as well. So if you do that and then you go over to FME and you just copy and paste that query, it's just so easy to use. This is what a sample request in the Salesforce SOQL looks like. First, you're going to select one or more fields. If you need to select more than one field, it's just comma separated. Then you say from your object. So in this case, it would be from ideas. And then where, and let's say I want where vote count is greater than 0. So we want more than 0 votes per idea. Just kind of a sidetrack here, which is better, to use the where clause within the Salesforce connector, or do you go afterwards and use it in a tester transformer? So generally, this is the rule. If you can get the database to do the work for you, that's what you want to do. So it's much better to use the where clause in the SOQL connector than it would be to use another transformer in a tester. And that's simply because here you're only reading in 2,815 records, where on the right-hand side, you're reading in 3,519 records. So by using that where clause, you're going to be reading in less data, you'll have to process less data, and therefore it's going to be faster. So on the left-hand side, where it's all in the Salesforce connector, it's only 2.2 seconds, or on the right side, it's 2.9 seconds. Now I'm just going to take another quick detour for those of you who are new to FME. From FME Desktop, which is what Sinai showed off, you can publish your workspaces up to FME Server. FME Server is a way to either share or automate your workspaces. So I could run my workspace manually through FME Server, or I can create an FME Server app, which is a no-code solution to creating a web app. This can be shared amongst your organization, or if your server is publicly available, you can share these publicly so anyone can go and run your FME Server apps. So I created an FME Server app for my demo. So first we're going to see the final result of what it looks like, and then I'll talk about how I created it. So what this app is going to do is it's going to take 4 random ideas from the community and put them in an HTML page. This HTML page will list A, B, C, and D. And then together, we're going to guess which one has the most upvotes. So here's my FME Server app page. If I wanted to build a new one, I would just click here and create my workspace app. However, I've done that for us already. So we can just go to View, which is right here. I just wanted to enter in my email in ahead of time. And now I'm going to click OK, and we're going to stream back 4 random ideas that are on our community. So these are the 4 ideas. I'll copy and paste them into our chat. And then we're going to have a poll and see which one is the most popular. I don't know, Chris and I, how do you feel? Which one do you think is the most popular here?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good choices here this time. For people behind the scenes, we've actually tried this a couple times, and we've gotten it right a couple times, but this one could be a little bit closer. Snai, what are you thinking?
I just lost the options there.
Oh, they're in the chat.
Oh.
So if you look at the chat, it should show them.
There we go. Okay. I feel like that manage automations one would be fairly popular at the time. What do you guys think?
I do like that. So if you don't know, FME automations are where you automate your workspaces. So the first one, A, is FME Server manage automations at schedule, start, date, and time, which would be super useful. B is parameterize where clause in a database reader, which would also be useful. So basically that would be the where clause. You can create a user parameter, I believe, and then users could select that user parameter or write in their own where clause. I like that idea. C is add workspace properties and private parameters to our FMW reader, which is our workspace reader. I can't say I've ever used that reader, so I wouldn't know. And then data inspector last AOI/extend, next AOI/extend. And I don't really know what that one means.
if that'd be the area of interest.
Ah,
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think I'm gonna agree. I think it's got to be A. I think you guys are onto something there.
Okay, let's check it out. So the results will go to my email.
Okay, and I'm going to close this poll down. It looks like most of you have got your answers in.
It was actually C,
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
which is quite interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
So people use that reader to read in their workspaces and to get details on them.
Interesting.
And so maybe they want to know, have any private or published parameters changed? That's an interesting one. And then, yeah, the parameterized where clause in the database reader also seems like a great idea. So I do realize that most people aren't going to be making games out of their Salesforce data, nor should they really be doing that. However, there's a great purpose behind this. So you don't need to create a game from it. You can create a report for users to see. If they don't have access to Salesforce, or if they want a quick HTML report, you can do that within FME. So using this FME connector, I can get my data from Salesforce and I can stream it back into a report for my users to see instantly. This is an example of something that we've actually done. So back in the days where we used to have salespeople that would attend conferences and travel, they might want to know who they'll be talking to at these different conferences. So they can open up their FME app and select their location using that app. We do have that ability. What this report will do is it will get data from all of our customers within the area, and it will stream them back to them so they can see who's that account, what current assets do they have, and just other data that they might want to know about the customers within the area. They can then use this information to book meetings or discuss with these customers afterwards to just make sure everything's okay and see what opportunities we could have there. So it's super useful for us. One thing to note about this report is we're actually taking multiple different objects, different data from these different objects, different fields, and then we're putting them all together, which is something FME can do really easily. So for my demo, I'll just show off how I created that workspace. So this is what my workspace looks like. So first here, I have the Salesforce connector. It's just going to use that same select statement that I had before. So I'm going to select title, vote total from idea, where the vote total is greater than 10. So that means there's more than one vote on it. And I also have to expose these. So if you're selecting fields, you'll have to expose them in the transformer. So all I had to do was write out vote total and title. From here, I use the sampler. So I'm going to sample 4 of these records. I use the counter to get 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next, I use this custom transformer that lives on the hub to take my numbers and turn them into letters. I could have easily done this using an attribute manager as well, but I wanted a solution where, let's say if I wanted 10 different ideas, I wouldn't have to go in and manually write 1 equals A, 2 equals B. It's just a much easier solution. So this transformer lives on the hub, and it's the num to alpha converter. After that, I use this HTML report generator, which is super easy. You just fill out what fields you want, and it'll automatically make an HTML page for you. And I used a writer there. So that is what's going to be directly streamed back to the user using the data streaming service on FME Server. From there, I also wanted to get these attributes and send myself an email with what results they have. So here I have the attribute keeper just to kind of clean up my attributes, make sure that nothing's left over that I don't want. I sorted them so that the vote total would be first, so the highest votes to the lowest votes. From there, I used another HTML report generator, and then I use that in the body of my email. So super simple, no code here. And now I have this app, but this could easily be a report that I'm streaming back to my users. All right, and with that, I'll pass this off to Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Sienna. All right, so we are moving on to the Salesforce REST API at this point. So from here on out, we're going to be kind of taking a combination of the Salesforce readers, the Salesforce Connector, as well as the Salesforce API, because you don't necessarily have to pick one and run with that. You can use any combination if you wanted to kind of mix and match in your workspace. It's really whatever you're most comfortable with. You have that ability with FME. So before we get into the demo and everything, we're going to start off first by just talking about the Salesforce API and what an API is in general. So an API is an application programming interface that provides programmatic access to your data in Salesforce. In Salesforce's case, they actually have 11 APIs ranging from the basic REST and SOAP-based APIs into the more specific ones for things like streaming and tooling. Today, we're going to be focusing mainly on that REST API, but if you're going to do something like a full data migration or a full system migration rather, you'd want to consider using something like the bulk API because that one's actually optimized for large data sets up to 1 terabyte per day. So all this, because they do have 11 APIs available, all this could be a little intimidating at the start. They actually have a really great documentation guide, which is going to be linked in the slides that you'll receive later. And that's just the which API do I use. It's a great page on the Salesforce site. I'll actually just go there really quickly just so we can see all the different ones they have available. And you can see it's laid out very nicely. You can see the expected data format that you're going to be posting and receiving data from. So this is a great documentation if you need to figure that out. So when would you want to use the REST API approach in FME? Well, there's two main reasons that I could kind of think of. The first would be you need to have the ability to download or upload files. And this would be for the one reason that the Salesforce reader and writer do not support reading or writing that base64 encoded attribute. So I've actually run this in FME Workbench using the reader and writer, and you actually will see this warning pop up that says base64 fields are not supported. You can see this with other types of fields as well. I believe location is also not supported. You can write directly to the longitude and latitude custom fields that are created, but not the display field. So there's a couple of limitations there. The second reason would be if speed is critical to your operation. So when you're using the reader and writer, you're creating a batch job every time you're sending features into those readers and writers. And the API approach would actually just send it in one job and give you that ID back. So if you're using the reader and writer, the process would be write the data, then read it back in to get the ID. With the REST API, all you do is post the data and a response ID is returned by the HTTP caller, which provides you with that same ID for that field. So it kind of cuts the workload in half. So let's get started with creating a simple solution. Salesforce can be created very similar to a relational database since everything's linked by an ID. And we can use FME's strengths here because we're great at joining, doing schema mapping, and validating for things like the attributes, attribute values, things like date time formats, and things like that. We also have the ability to read in data mid-translation with a feature reader. So you can prepare your data for a where clause if you wanted to use that more simple approach with the Salesforce reader and writer. As with most other things, there's a bunch of different ways you can build this. So you can use, again, that Salesforce reader. You could then use a feature reader. You could use the Salesforce connector midway through your translation and kind of use all those attributes and map them directly into your where clauses or SOQL statements. So it's a very dynamic way that you can build these workflows. Just going to mention that you can improve performance of these workflows by minimizing the number of batch jobs that are going to be performed by the Salesforce reader. I'll show you a couple of examples of this in just a little bit, but if you can kind of cut down the number of Salesforce readers, so for each table that you're going to be reading or each object in Salesforce, that's going to create a separate batch job. So every time you can cut that number down, you're going to see significant improvements in the performance of your workspace. So, all right, let's get to it. We're going to start connecting these trails. So we're going to be using a combination of reading data from Salesforce, doing some SOQL, and using the REST API to help us download and upload attachments. So the first case we're going to do is just go out to our Salesforce and download all the case attachments to our local directory. Within this, we're going to be using the Salesforce reader. We're going to be joining the data based on those IDs and sending it to the HTTP caller to dynamically set the REST endpoint calls to get the actual files. And on the download side, we're going to be using something that we refer to as a fan out. So the fan out, you can see that it's going to be going into a new folder called case. Within there, we're going to have a subdirectory with the actual case number that is set by Salesforce. And then within that, we'll have the actual file itself. And that's going to retain the same file name. All of those are attributes coming directly from that Salesforce object. For the second demo we're going to be seeing, we're going to be uploading new cases and new attachments. So we're going to be kind of doing in a 3-step process. We're going to create the case first. We're going to upload a base64 encoded file, and then we're going to link the file to the case. And that's going to be using a combination of the REST API to create the case and upload the file, and then using SOQL to actually get the ID for the case and the file and link them together at the end. So kind of the pre-demo summary we're going to see here, our goal is going to be to migrate attachments into and out of Salesforce. And we like to refer to this as round tripping. So we're going to show you the whole process of either getting data in or getting data out, which is going to be hugely important if you're either doing a migration or if you just want to sync it between your applications. So the obstacle here is, well, it's kind of obvious. CRM migrations can be a daunting task just because of the number of IDs and things that you have to link that can become very complicated, but with FME, it kind of helps to mitigate that pain. The solution here that we're going to have is that you can leverage things like dynamic engines. So if you want to do these huge one-time data lifts, you can spin up a whole whack load of engines with FME Server to help process these cases and help you get the attachments even faster. But if you just need it running on a one-off instance or on a schedule, that's something that FME Server can help with as well. And obviously, our result here is going to be that we got our data into and out of Salesforce. So we'll go ahead and hop into Workbench at this point. So we'll start off with getting the attachments. Just a quick overview of what we're going to be seeing here. We're going to be reading in from 2 objects, the case object and the content documents object as well. We're also using that feature reader to read a 3rd object, and this is using the content document link. Before we get into this, I actually want to make one note here. If you are going to use the feature reader, because we are going to be conscious of the number of batch jobs we're creating, I'll just point out that in this specific workspace, we're not only creating these 2 batch jobs in Salesforce, we're also creating 8 that are being sent into the feature reader. So for every feature that is sent into this transformer, we're going to be creating a separate batch job on the Salesforce side. So you can see in this case, we're going to be creating 8 jobs. That's actually going to be pretty inefficient because it's going to slow down, make our data kind of wait on the Salesforce end because we're essentially going to Salesforce, authenticating, we're creating that batch job, waiting for the batch job to finish. It's coming back as a CSV file, and then FME is going to read it in. So we can actually improve this right out of the gate. So we'll close this one down. We don't need to save it. And we're actually going to change it with a slightly different where clause. So I'll open up that feature reader again. That first one we saw, we were going to be using the content document ID equals the ID, but instead we can use the in operator. And I'll just open this up here. So with the in operator, we can provide a list of IDs, and this will only require us to send one query to Salesforce, wait for that batch job to complete, and then it's going to finish processing our data. So that's kind of how you have to format it. It's all single quote, wrapped in single quotes and comma separated. And then within that where clause, it is wrapped in parentheses. So once we've gotten past that, we've improved the performance of this workspace. All we're really doing here is treating it like a database. We're just joining the data twice. So we're joining on those IDs to get the attachments, and then we're joining the linked entity ID by the ID of the case. And this just tells us which cases refer to which attachments. The last step here, because we can't use any combination of these, is the REST API HTTP caller to kind of go and get the actual data here. So we're using a get method, and I'll just open up this in a text editor here. We can see that this is the REST endpoint that we're going to be using, and we're using the attribute that we're actually getting from one of those tables. So this is what I was kind of mentioning. You can build these workflows and use the attributes throughout the entire process here. On the output side, I'll just point out that fan out again. We have files being downloaded to my local machine into a cases folder with the case number, and these are all based on the attributes that are available. I'll just expand that in the FME feature attributes window here, and you can have the title and extension automatically set for you as well. So at this point, we have had 12 files successfully downloaded to our machine. So I'll just go into my file explorer here. We have our cases, and it looks like we have 5 cases that have been downloaded. each with their own respective files that are all linked appropriately. In this first case, we have a friendly lizard waving back at us. In the next case, we have things like CSVs. So it can download any file that is stored on your Salesforce. So that would be getting data out of Salesforce. If you wanted to download to your local machine, sync it to a local database, things like that, you have a lot of different options on where you actually want to send that data. It kind of shows you the process of getting the data out and then figuring out where you want to put it. So next, we will look at getting data into Salesforce. As I mentioned, there's a little bit of a process here because first we want to create that case. So I'm going to create a case using that REST API call. And this would just be using an HTTP caller with the post method. We're going to post it to a case with the following body. This is all just random data that we've kind of filled in, as well as the account and IDs that we've already linked it to. At this point, I'm going to just run it to the JSON extractor just for the demonstration purposes. Because again, here, if you were using that feature writer and reading that case back in, you would have to wait for the 2 batch jobs to process. Instead, what we have here is a response body that comes back from Salesforce with that post method and provides us with the ID of that case that we just created. So it's a lot more of a streamlined process to kind of link everything together if you use the REST API. The next step here, since we have created that case, we're going to go ahead and encode a file with base64. And this is just using a couple of different transformers. We'll expand the next section, which would be to actually upload that file to Salesforce, and that goes into the content version object. And then using the Salesforce connector, let's open that up. We'll go ahead and get the content version ID, and this is what is a required field to link the case to that document. And the last step here will be another simple post, where we're just going to post the IDs to link the attachment to the case. So we'll give that a run for the rest of the way. And in just a second here, we'll see it's nice and speedy to upload that file and finish off the case, and it's going to be all attached. So you can see I have a case number here. Copy that from Workbench. And we'll go into our Salesforce. I can actually just give this a refresh. So we currently have 12 cases before that was run, and now we have 13, and it would be this top one. And that ID that I just copied is this ID right up here in the top of the URL. So that's the actual record ID in Salesforce, not the case number. You can get the case number as well, but the Salesforce ID is more useful in this case. So we can see that we have uploaded that CSV, and that kind of completes the process of posting the data up to Salesforce. So it kind of shows you both getting it in and getting it out of Salesforce. All right. So again, just wanted to highlight that performance consideration. So whenever you are reading reading from Salesforce, you want to minimize the number of batch jobs created by possible where possible. As well, you want to minimize the number of features you're going to be reading. So just on that left-hand side, that was the first bit of the demo where I showed, in that case, we had 8 features going into that feature reader. That would have created those 8 jobs, and that would have taken about a minute to complete. Whereas with the in operation, if that is possible to use, you can see it kind of cuts the time in half. So if you had hundreds or thousands of cases that you wanted to download the attachments for, you can see how that would really start to snowball and really slow your process down. So if you can cut down the number of batch jobs created, you will see significant performance improvements. All right, so now we're done with the demo. We're going to talk about a little bit about our community migration, our own Salesforce story. So if you have been following Safe Software and FME in the past, you may have noticed that our community migration did take place. I think it was in September, if I'm not mistaken. And we had an entire process going from the old platform, which was AnswerHub, and moving it into the Salesforce community. So we had one team, it was part of the server team, and Sienna was actually part of this, so I'll ask her a question in just a little bit, of migrating the whole process of the AnswerHub community to the Salesforce one. So we had to essentially fetch data from AnswerHub and push it to Salesforce. So we used the AnswerHub API, stored it in a database, extracted the data from the database, and then pushed it on the other end to Salesforce using the REST API. We also leveraged FME Server for this because we wanted to be able to chain workspaces together and really automate the process. This also helped with kind of managing errors and error recovery, because if anything ever went wrong, we could kind of troubleshoot it and work through it this way. And on the Salesforce side, you could actually post things, you could publish things and chain workspaces together, because as you did see in that first demo, things do require a certain sequence to be followed. So automations really enabled this. And again, with the error handling, it was very easy to see if any one piece went wrong, what was that and how could we fix it. So our end result here was that on the left-hand side, that was the old community using the Answer Hub platform. We were able to migrate everything from the links, the attachments, as well as all the content from the old community into our new Salesforce community. And so Sienna, just want to poke you with a little question, because you were working on the ideas portion specifically. What was your biggest hurdle when you were migrating the ideas board to the Salesforce platform?
I think the biggest one was just how comments are handled in Salesforce. In our old platform, comments could be whatever. But in this new Salesforce platform, we had to take out a lot of HTML that wasn't supported. If we posted a comment with HTML that was like beyond like basic paragraph tags, then it would automatically break. So we had to do a lot of work with string replacers and Python to get all of that HTML out. And we do talk about that in the Migrating the Community webinar.
Awesome. And yeah, we do have that linked in the access to the Migrating the Community webinar down below, so you'll see that in the slides as well. So at this point, we are basically wrapping up the webinar at this point. So we're going to talk a little bit about a summary. So once again, there are multiple different ways to access your Salesforce data using FME. So your trail, your way. How do you want to use it? You can go with the basic approach with the reader and writer. If you're more savvy with SOQL, you can use that Salesforce connector, but keep in mind that is read-only. And if you want to be a little bit more of an explorer and kind of trail off into more customized calls, you can use that REST, the Salesforce API, one of the 11 available with the HTTP caller. The nice thing with this is, again, you do have about 450 or more transformers available in FME Workbench, and that's just ways that you can prepare your data for be either a migration or if you want to sync your data to a database or even a local directory. So you can do things like the schema mapping, validating to make sure all of your attributes and values are formatted correctly. And you can even do enriching data. So if you wanted to kind of join it up to your GIS data or anything like that, you do have the option there. So some tips and tricks for getting started with this. We do highly recommend checking out all the forums and documentation. Whenever you're getting started with a new topic, whether it's Salesforce or FME, or if you're more familiar with both, checking out existing forum posts and documentation can save you a bunch of time. A lot of the time when I was working with the SOQL stuff, I could go quickly onto the Salesforce forum and someone would ask the exact same question. So it would show me exactly how I need to format my SOQL. I'll admit that I'm not very savvy with SOQL, so I was living on that forum quite regularly. Another thing we have available is all the FME getting started guides. So if you're working with the REST API and you're getting into that territory, we have a getting started with JSON topic, for example. This will show you all the transformers we have available for JSON. We have ones for XML as well, and other topics like that. So it's a really great resource to kind of keep in mind if you want to get up and running really quickly. So we want you to start integrating Salesforce with your other systems today. Give it a try on your own FME Workbench. Publish it up to server. And if you aren't already an FME user, go ahead and download FME 21.2 and get your free trial. We'll have these workspaces for the workspace available shortly. I believe they'll be posted as soon as the webinar goes up. And try it out with your own Salesforce data. See what you can create. And if you want to and feel so inclined, please do share on the community. Let us know what you got working, if you're facing any challenges, and how we can help solve those. And with that, we've reached the Q&A. Is there anything that we want to address at this point?
Yeah, there wasn't very many questions. One of our partners came in, Kevin Weller from Modern Geosystems, and he says that he's built in FME a way to nearly universally sync Salesforce data with a local database in a bidirectional real-time manner. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to Kevin. The other one was, do we have any resources for creating and using Excel templates?
Right, that's a good question. So we don't necessarily have resources for creating those Excel templates themselves, but we do have an Excel templates article on the community. Go Excel template. It's that one because I've already searched it. It's called Using a Template File When Writing Excel Data. So we do have a great article that kind of walks you through that entire process of using templates with the Excel writer.
Nice.
And we can send out that link as well.
Okay. Another one is we have a new user to FME. Can workflows be scheduled to run regularly?
Who wants to handle that one? One of the server folks?
Yes, it's
Sorry, there?
possible. Yeah, you can hear me.
Yes.
I'll take that one. You can definitely schedule workspaces to run on a schedule. That could be like a really simple schedule, once a day, once a week, or you can set up more complex schedules. The best way to do that is in FME Server, our server platform, and we can chat out some documentation on how to get started with Server. If you don't have Server yet, but you already have Workbench, it's possible to also schedule your workspaces to run using something like the Windows Task Scheduler, that kind of thing. Though I definitely recommend looking into Server if that's something you're going to be doing often, especially when you're organizing lots of workflows and jobs for different users, different systems, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Another question is, does FME work with Workday?
Yeah, that one's a good question. I haven't worked with Workday at all. Have either of you? But the answer would be yes from the HTTP caller if it has an API available.
So can Dale jump in here uninvited?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Chrissy, for asking that. We actually have a bit of a discovery process going on right now about connecting FME with Workday. On a personal level, I'm very interested in this. One of my, actually my college roommate has been at Workday for years and years, and he and I have been scheming for a long time about use cases about where we could get our two products working together. So Chrissy, if you could let us more details about what you'd actually like to see, I'd love to add you to the kind of interest group that we've got. We do have some other folks wanting to move location data in and out of Workday. And of course, that's very well suited to FME, but really FME works with any kind of data. And as Christian has mentioned, for sure it would work today using the HTTP caller, but that's a little bit of stone knives and bearskins way. We can probably do a little bit better than that. So really, really interested in that question and would love to see your details. And you know, if we're lucky one day, we'll have this team back to do same webinar as this, but instead of my old buddy, Mark Benioff, I'm teasing because we actually never met each other, although it was kind of funny to find out that we were in the same newsletter. Maybe we can have my other friend be part of the other webinar on Workday and FME. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Dale.
There's one, but I'm honestly not too sure. So it's any tips for generating SFDC reports and have content sent to DB or GBQ. And then he also said, we currently use FME automations to populate our BigQuery data warehouse for analytics across our Dataverse. SFDC is one of the data feeds we run daily, but we'd like to potentially real-time this data. Is this an FME stream? So it isn't one I'm aware of. For those of you who don't know, FME Server can handle streaming data, but I'm not aware of what SFDC would look like. But we'll follow up with you in an email. Dale, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think that Salesforce gives us a feed that I know of. Like if there was a way that Salesforce would pump out its updates to say Kafka or something like that, then we could absolutely connect to it. So that would really, my first search would be, is there like a Salesforce to Kafka thing that isn't FME that kind of collects that? Otherwise, Sienna, I know you've done lots and lots of work with webhooks, and possibly, again, I don't know, but if there was a way that Salesforce can invoke a webhook every time something interesting happens, then that would be another way to do this. It wouldn't really be a stream, but it would be darn close to real time.
Yeah, Dale, just as you kind of talked about that, I just pulled up the Apex trigger section on the Salesforce setup. So webhooks are totally possible. I've done some testing with that. Sienna is kind of the master in this, so I'll leave any webhook related questions for her, but it is possible to set these up.
Awesome.
And that would hit something on our FME server side and then run something with that data.
Yeah, this would be a great use actually for FME Cloud, because you'd really need your FME server to be out there on the internet for this to work. It couldn't be within your own VPN. And so an FME Cloud hosted FME server would be, which is just FME server pay by the hour, would be a great way to get this feed in.
And then kind of a more general question. Someone wants to know, are we in the same office? Or are we around the world?
We're all over the place. We have Calgary, New Westminster, Surrey, and two in the same office at the same point. Different offices, but same office building. And Dale, you're joining from Aldergrove, is that correct?
No, I'm high above the floodwaters in Fort Langley. I'm looking at a flood. If anybody follows me on Twitter, you can see my somewhat emotional tweets this morning, but my problems don't amount to a hill of beans. But anyway, at least where I'm sitting is dry.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say we're all over the world, but we're typically in Canada. Sometimes our employees like go home and work for a little bit, but definitely a Canadian-based company. Kevin also came back. He was the one who was a partner with us who made like a real-time solution. And he said his sync solution uses update streams from Salesforce. There's a Salesforce streaming API. So it looks like it is possible. Maybe we'll have to chat with Kevin after this and see what he's doing.
There you go.
Yeah, maybe we want to connect Tim with Kevin as well, it might look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point.
I'll just bring up .com/partners. We'll send out this link. Kevin's with Modern Geosystems, so we'll send out this link in case you're interested in talking to him.
Kevin's given some great FME World Tour talks as well that I'm sure the archive is somewhere. Thanks so much for tuning in today, Kevin, and for the ingenuity that you bring to our community for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Awesome. And before we wrap up this morning, I'll just share this screen here in case anyone's interested in redeeming their community badge this morning for joining us. Here's the code to type in and the link. And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. I'll just chime in and say, connect with us on social and also in the community. If you have any other questions come up post-webinar, we'll be there ready to chat with you. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to all our presenters this morning as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.